Howard here. I just got on.
Hi, Howard. Me too.
Geez.
My computer was down, and so I didn't know my computer was down, and it just came back on. And I have a couple of more people coming on, and I do
Good.
have some people that signed in as Deborah Musak. So we have to find out who those Deborah Musak people are. All right. Deborah Musak, number one.
Ah, that's
That's
Marty.
Marty. That's Marty. Let me see. You're still muted, Marty. Let's see which one you are. Um, can you unmute yourself? Okay, so that means this one is Marty.
I'm unmuted, I think.
Yeah.
Yay.
Okay.
Hi.
Hi.
All right. I have to rename you to be Marty. Hi, everybody. I'm glad that you're on. My computer just came back, so and that Deborah Musak is Jean.
How do you change the name?
I'm going to do that right now. I think you can do it if you go into participants. If you on the bottom of your screen, there's participants. It'll say participants 5. And if you click on that, you'll get a list of participants over on the side. And
Yeah, I see.
You'll see, I think you're the top one.
You can also go hover your mouse over the thumbnail image. The top right 3 dots will appear. And oh, now it's not doing it.
No.
So on your own, yeah, you can rename yourself.
If you when you see the participants and you put your when you see the participant, oh, there you go. Yes,
got it.
You changed that one. Okay, good. And Robert Zinkin, do we have any other Deborah Musaks here? No, we got them all. So we have a nice crew. I hope nobody had to wait for very long. My computer had gone down, and so I had a hard time getting on. Finally, I got on. Did anybody have to wait for a long time?
I did.
Yes.
You did? Yeah, Gene did. Howard did. Okay. My apologies to you folks.
That's all right. Stuff happens.
Yeah, okay.
Let's get on with it.
All righty. So, and Howard, I did get your mail that came to my mailbox, but I just went down to the mailbox and got it today. So good. I haven't opened it yet.
You will like it. It's got a check in it.
Okay. That'll
incentivize you, won't it?
I'll be sure to not throw it in the fire.
All
right, let me, and Robert, hi. All right, you are muted, Robert. Let me unmute you. You can unmute. Oh, I think you have to unmute yourself as well.
Okay, I think
there you go.
There you go. How are you?
Good. Where are you from, Robert?
Westchester, Pennsylvania. You and I have talked a while ago, but it's been a while.
Well, yes, and you had the friend Bob Denham or something like that.
Could be. I had a friend that I got your Constitution book for.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Long time ago.
Yes, that's right. Okay, good. Good to see you here. And
good to be here.
Yeah. All right, I am calling up my copy of my Constitution Study Guide, because we're going to be reading from that. Nope, not there. Hang on. All right, so to start off on the to start off on the review. Oh, Kevin, you're there with camera and everything. How cool! Good to see you, Kevin.
See you, John.
All right. Okay, so let's we can start off. We start off with the review with what is a republic? Definition: what is a republic? And anyone can answer except for Joel. Anyone care to make a stab at it?
Okay, it is a rule by law. It has mixed, this is Howard, it
Yes.
has mixed types of governance. It's got a monarchy, an aristocracy, and a democracy, and a Supreme Court.
That's the aristocracy.
Yes,
That's a
the
good-
aristocracy.
That's
So-
that's a good stab. Gene, you want to take a stab?
Uh, a constitutional republic.
So it's got a constitution, eh?
It has a constitution. That's exactly correct. That is part of it. That is absolutely part of it. You have to have a constitution in order to have a republic. All right, now, Robert, you have anything to add?
Nope, I'm just listening right now.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. Marty, you got anything to add?
No, I said it all last week.
Okay. All right. All right, Joel, bring us home. Tell us what a republic is.
I thought it was pretty well covered. The only other thing I was thinking of is that the monarchy, the aristocracy, and democracy are natural forms of government. Republic is not a natural form of government, and then it is comprised of those three forms.
Exactly right. And it is a mixture, a mixed government. It is a combination of all three of those forms. It has three kind of branches, at least three, that each one one is a monarchy, or it has the monarchical part to it. Another part is the aristocratic. The other part is the democratic. And they all work to keep the others from gaining total control. That's the whole point of a republic, is to make sure that the government does not take total control. Some work better than others. They all have constitutions. Some of them are very good. Some of them are followed. Some of them are not. But a republic, the point of a republic is to attempt to keep the people from being totally governed, totally controlled by the government. All right. Once we look at that, everybody good with that?
Yep.
All right. All right. I'm going to I'm going to mute all, because I hear some stuff in the background there. But you can unmute yourself if you need to say something. The next thing that we did is after we cover what is a republic, then we look at our Constitution, because it defines a republic. It defines this republic that we have. So now I'm going to share my screen, and there we go. And many of you will recognize this. And this is, now if you do have something that you want to say, I need to have you unmute yourself and speak up. And then we'll talk about whatever it is, because I can't see you and I can't see the chat. So I'm sort of flying blind. So, all right, this is my study guide. This is a great quote. Liberty is not a means to a higher political end. It is itself the highest political end, according to Lord Acton. And we continue down here and we get down to page, do all this, we get down here to page, whoop, 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 whoop. Whoa, that was so fast. Constitution of the United States. In the framing of a government, the greatest difficulty lies in this. You must first enable the government to control the governed, and in the next place, oblige it to control itself. That's the hard part. So what it ends up being is, and this is one of the complaints a lot of people have about the Constitution, is that it is not enforceable by itself. And that is why it is a requirement of the people to enforce it. The people are the ones who are responsible to enforce it. And this part here about making the government oblige itself to control itself, you can do the best you can about that by making it have these branches working against each other and checks and balances and all that. But if they decide to collude together against the people, it is only the people that can ultimately enforce it. All right, then we do the preamble. And in the preamble, just by the virtue of what this is, originally they wrote the Constitution starting at Article 1, then they did Article 2, Article 3, Article 4, and all that. And when they were all done with it, they came back around and they said, you know, we should tell people, we should kind of frame this as to what this is. So they put the preamble on at the front of it. And the preamble makes it very clear that this is a charter, that they are chartering something, because in a charter you do, any charter, the Magna Carta or any charter, a charter that the state gives to a business or anything like that, there are two elements to the charter. One element of it is who it is that is granting the powers or rights or abilities that it's going to allow, and the other one is what the rights and abilities and so on are that are going to be granted. So in the preamble, we have first who it is that is granting this power, and it is we the people of the United States. That didn't turn out exactly the way I wanted, but it's we the people of the United States. And that's showing that the sovereign which is chartering this thing is the people itself. It's not the states, it's not anyone else, it's the people. And what it is they are chartering is they are ordaining and establishing this Constitution for the United States of America. That is what is being chartered. So just like when you have a business or a town or a school district or anything, the state gives it a charter because the state is the sovereign that is allowing this thing to occur. In this case, it is we the people that are allowing this thing to occur. We are doing this because we want to have a more perfect union. We want to establish justice. We want to have domestic tranquility and all of that. And so in order for us to govern ourselves and achieve these things, that's why we're putting this Constitution of the United States together. That's the preamble. Then we start in with Article 1. And Article 1 says that all the laws, because it is, as Howard said, it's a nation of laws. It is a republic is run on laws. And so the very first thing that we're going to talk about is who makes the laws. That's going to be the most very, very, very important thing. And so who makes the laws are going to be the Congress of the United States, which consists of a Senate and a House of Representatives. And now we get into Article 1, Section 2. And Article 1, Section 2, first, there's a few words that let's go ahead and do the words here so that we can so that when we get to the words we don't stumble over them. So Joel, you're first up. Give us what attain means or attained.
Attain, to arrive, to get. If you have attained the age of 18, you are 18 years old.
Good. That clear for everybody?
Yep.
All right. Marty, you're next.
Okay. Bound to a service for a term of years, a person. A person who has a contract that he must work at a certain job for some number of years.
Yes, and that was what they were doing there was describing indentured servitude. But that's where, for instance, if you were in England and you wanted to get to the United States, you'd say, I'll tell you what, I will sign a contract that says I will work for you. And he would actually give this contract to the ship's captain, to a ship captain, and the ship captain would take that contract, and as his part of the contract, he would sail the guy to Virginia or Massachusetts or wherever he was going. The person would get off the boat, and then the captain would then sell that contract to someone in where he had landed, and that person then was under contract to that person to work for that person for a certain number of years, however many years was on the contract. So that's bound to service for a term of years. The next one, direct taxes, I'm going to give to Gene because this gets into a real interesting situation. Go ahead, Gene. What's direct taxes?
This is one of my favorites because it's so controversial with a lot of contracts. The taxes are assessed, see assesses in glossary, it's directly on a person or his property. Indirect taxes are assessed on a transaction the person makes. Sales taxes, even though paid directly by the person, are assessed on the transaction of the sale. The person is therefore indirectly taxed. If everyone in the country had to pay $1 just for being alive, that would be a direct tax. Income taxes are indirect taxes assessed on the transaction of making income. Now, what is the definition of income, Mr. Chambers?
Oh, no, I'm not going to go there. I'm not going to go there.
Please.
I'm just going to tell you, I'm just going to, because
Gross income is either.
the definition of income is what's defined in Title 26 of the U.S. Code. That's where they define income. And all this is about is making the difference between a direct tax and an indirect tax. That's all we're doing here. All right, is that somewhat clear to everyone? Anyone have any question about that? The difference between a direct and an indirect tax?
Are wages different than income?
That gets into what the definition of income is, which is what is defined in Title 26 of the United States Code, and we're not going to talk about that. What we're going to talk about is
Okay.
simply the difference between direct and indirect taxes.
Title 26.
That's the Internal Revenue Code.
Right. Do you have a section number even maybe?
Throughout there are different definitions of income in different sections of that code.
Okay, thank you.
Well, you don't have to thank me, thank Congress for that.
John, I've got a question.
Yeah.
And again, I'm getting back to my recent reading of the book Alexander Hamilton. And when he set up the Treasury, he knew that taxing the individuals just would not fly. I mean, and it was part of the, actually written into the Constitution, obviously. But it just simply, no kind of tax on individuals, direct or indirect, he feel would fly because people were so upset what they'd
I'm
gone
sorry,
over.
somebody's clicking. Please mute yourself. You're okay.
Sorry.
Okay, Joel, go ahead. No, Joel, you are now muted. I'm sorry. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
There we
Thank
go.
you.
He felt that there would be a revolt in the United States after the Constitution had just passed if they tried to do any kind of tax on individuals, whether it was considered direct or indirect. I mean, you read history that same way? Is obviously there was some reason they wrote into the Constitution that direct taxes were not to be done.
Well, actually, in section 2, we'll talk about how you do direct taxes if you're going to do them.
Okay.
Because in section 8, it talks about indirect taxes and what indirect taxes are, what indirect taxes are, and how to do them and so on. But that's in section 8, and we'll
Great.
get to that. And we'll get to that. Okay.
Could I interject something, please? The whole purpose of the revolution was to avoid taxes. I mean, they wanted a penny on a pound of tea.
Actually, that's not true. That's not true. If you look at the Declaration of Independence, it has in it a list of some 30 grievances against the king. About taxes, the first one having to do with taxes is down there at number 17. There are 16 before that are much more important, which had to do with things like being able to make your own laws and not have to have it come from some distant land where they didn't know anything about what you were doing and so on. It had to do with that sort of thing. That's what it was really about. We have been taught in our schools that it has to do with taxes to make it all sound very pecuniary, and they were all vile and revolting people and only interested in money, which is not, when you read the Declaration, that's not what it is. The first 16 grievances have to do with us being able to rule ourselves. Finally, when you get down to 17, it mentions taxes.
Excellent. I stand corrected.
Okay.
Thank you.
You bet. So, I mean, they knew that taxing was important, and that was one reason why the Constitution had to be done, because the Constitution was written in 1787. They had I'll give you this bit of history. Because you saw in the preamble, it talked about, a more perfect union and, domestic tranquility and establishing justice and all that. But there was a particular reason why they happened to do it in 1787. I mean, why didn't they do it in 1785? Why didn't they wait until 1802? Why did they do it in 1787? And the reason they did it in 1787 was because during the what is called the Revolutionary War, but actually it's the War for Independence. During the War for Independence, they had run up huge debt, and they had the main person that covered it was the King of France. And Ben Franklin went over there and negotiated the deal and made a great deal for us, which was, it was basically interest-free or very, very, very low interest, and it did not have to be paid until 5 years after the war was concluded. We would not have to come up with any kind of a payment to the King of France until 5 years after the war was concluded. The war was concluded in 1783 with the Treaty of Versailles. So that means now the clock starts. That means the clock is going to run out in 1788. They were going to have to come up with 25 million livres, however much a livre is worth, I don't know. But they were going to have to come up with 25 million of them. And the only way that the Confederation could do it was for the Congress, the Continental Congress, to go around state to state, hat in hand, and say, hey, can you give us some money? We've got this, we have this debt we have to pay. They thought, they figured actually an excellent idea, and could have worked, and it probably did help some to pay off the debt, was they had we have one more Deborah Muzak coming in. Okay, here we go. Was that they had they had what was called the Northwest Ordinance, and basically all of the states that had land up to the Mississippi granted that land that had not settled yet to the Continental Congress for the Continental Congress to sell off to settlers and so on going into that territory to make new states. Then the Continental Congress would use that money that they raised from selling that land to pay off the debt. And that was how they were going to do that. However, it wasn't enough. They were going to have to come up with a real way to make real money to be able to pay off the debt. So they knew that was coming in 1788. So in 1787, they said, we got to get here. We have to have a Congress that has some teeth in it that can actually raise some money, because otherwise we're going to go into default. That was why they had to come about in 1787 to do this thing, to get this thing done. They knew that taxing was important because there were certain things that governments needed to do. And the first one was to pay off the debt. That was the big deal. But then there were other things. So they have direct taxes and they have indirect taxes. Direct taxes are addressed in Article 1, Section 2 here. And then indirect taxes are in Section 8. Who just arrived? You want to unmute yourself?
Yeah, Bob Zink's back. I got disconnected somehow and I had to go in and get on my iPad, so I'm back now. It says,
Oh, okay. Thank you, Bob.
it probably says Linda Zink because I'm using her iPad, so.
Well, actually, it says Deborah Muzak because you signed in under my wife's my wife's link to get in.
Oh.
That's fine. So, okay. So I hope that little bit of edification was. Anybody have any questions about that, or anybody want to push back on it? Anything?
John,
No?
I have a comment
Yeah, sure.
on the nature of indirect taxes. It either has to be an excise or a duty or an impost. Okay, and that's depicted in the Constitution. So the question I'm asking, what is the subject of the tax? Is it a taxable activity? Is it a taxable event? Or some kind of a taxable occasion? And it has to be geographically defined. It just can't just say, we're going to tax you just because you live in California, and that kind of a thing. So direct taxes are like property taxes. We know that.
Right.
Okay. So, but the indirect taxes is where I have a problem that I'm always studying about, because sometimes it's not clear in how legislation makes the laws.
Yes, I agree. It is not clear how legislation makes the law.
They've delegated that authority to the Internal Revenue Code, and the Internal Revenue Code has a lot of administrative rules, and they're
Yes.
always constantly changing. I mean, you've got tax court, you've got the income tax by its nature is progressive, and it's actually the second plank of the Communist Manifesto. But I don't want to get political on this. I want to just stay on what the nature of the tax is, the subject of the tax, and is there a constitutional requirement?
Right. Okay, good. At this point, we're just defining and differentiating the difference between direct and indirect taxes, but Gene is correct. I agree. Okay? All right. All right. Howard, you're on the next one. You're seeing on the page there?
Yeah, I am. What is the topic? Because I was so involved in the discussion there, I lost my place.
That's all right. We're
Direct taxes? Oh, we just did electors.
Yes, that's correct.
People who vote.
People who vote. That's right. That's who electors are. That's exactly right.
Can I read further on, since that's like one sentence?
Oh, Howard. Oh, okay. You fellow, you go right ahead and do that.
Well, I'm
No,
fast.
that's all right, Howard. That's okay.
Here we go. I know you're just,
Yeah.
you're making a joke, and I get it. Electors of the most numerous branch. those who vote for the representatives of a legislative branch with more people in it than any other. For instance, most states have two branches of legislature, a Senate, let us say, with 50 people in it, and an assembly with 200 people in it. The, quote, most numerous branch, unquote, in this case is the assembly, and the, quote, electors of the most numerous branch, unquote, are those people who can vote for who gets to be in the assembly. Ta-da.
Okay, okay. That makes sense?
Yep.
Okay. Any questions by anybody? No? Okay. All right. Kevin, I don't know if you can unmute yourself. Can you unmute yourself? Kevin?
Yes, sorry, it just took a moment.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, you want to do the next one? Enumeration?
Yes, enumeration, a counting or naming one by one, a listing. For instance, when the government takes its census every 10 years, they make an enumeration of the people.
They just, yeah, that's correct. They just count them. That's what an enumeration is. Very good. The next one, Deborah, which is really Robert.
Okay. Let's see.
You're right. You're right here where the,
Yeah. Okay, executive authority.
yep,
The office of government that executes laws. In most states, it is the governor of the state.
good. We're good with that?
Yep.
All right. And I think we go back up to the top. Joel,
Impeachment, the act of officially accusing a public official of a crime.
good. And I think we're mostly pretty familiar with that one these days.
Yes.
Okay. Oh, and I guess Marty's gone off. Okay.
I'm here.
Oh, you are here. Oh, there you are. Okay. Good. You want to do
Sure.
the next two, just because they're
Okay.
short.
Okay, people of the several states, the people living in the states, the people living in Georgia or New York or any of the states.
Good.
Requisite, required by circumstances, needed or necessary.
Good. Okay. And the last one, I will just go ahead and do myself. Speaker of the House is the presiding officer of the House of Representatives, and writs of election is a legal document saying that an election is to occur. Everybody good with those?
Yep.
You may not know how they all fit together yet, but we're just defining the words to begin with. All right, now we'll move on. I think on my list here, it looks like Kevin is the first one up. Kevin, can you see the top part of, here we are, section 2, this paragraph?
Okay. House of Representatives, Section 2, the House of Representatives shall be composed of members chosen every second year by the people of the several states. And the electors in each state shall have the qualifications requisite for electors of the most numerous branch of the state legislature.
All right. So now, remembering from all the words that we did before, the House of Representatives is composed of members. And how often are those members chosen?
Every 2 years.
Every 2 years. Okay. And the electors in each state. So each state is going to elect these representatives, and someone that is an elector for that for the House of Representatives. What are the qualifications for that elector who's going to elect somebody to the House of Representatives? Anybody?
Well, it just says here that they're the ones who can vote.
They're the ones who can vote for what?
For the representatives.
The voters who can that's correct. The voters who can vote for the representatives have to have, there is a qualification. It can't just be any 2-year-old in the state. That person has to have a qualification in the state. What's the qualification?
They can vote for the most, whichever branch of the legislature has the most members in that state.
Exactly right. So if you can vote for the assembly or whatever you're going to call it, it's the House of Burgesses or whatever. If it's the most numerous branch of the state legislature, then they can vote for the member of the House of Representatives. That make sense?
Yes.
Now, the important point of this is that the federal government does not determine who gets to vote in the House, to put people in the House of Representatives. The House of Representatives cannot make a law that says only their friends get to vote for who is going to be in the House of Representatives. The rules for who gets to vote have to come from the state. This is part of the checks and balances on the federal government, is that it's the state that determines who gets to vote. Who's doing that squeaking?
That's my phone. I got to shut it off.
Oh, okay. Or you can just mute yourself. Either one. It's fine. All right. Now we get into. I don't know where we are. We at. Let's see. We just did. Kevin.
No person shall be a rep.
Yeah.
The second paragraph down.
Right, but I'm going to have Robert Zink read that.
Okay. No person shall be a representative who shall not have attained to the age of 25 years and been 7 years a citizen of the United States, and who shall not, when elected, be an inhabitant of that state in which he shall be chosen.
All right, so what are the qualifications for a person who's going to be in the House of Representatives? Somebody just shout it out to me.
Well, he's got to be 25 years old. He's got to have been living in that state for 5 years, and he has to have been a citizen for 7 years.
Yeah,
7 years a citizen.
There was
7 years a citizen.
I may have misheard you, Marty, but yes, 25 years is correct.
Yeah.
How long is he a citizen?
7.
7.
7, okay. And what about living, being an inhabitant of the state in which he's chosen from?
Doesn't make any sense to me.
He cannot be.
Who shall not?
Ah,
Yeah.
yes, good. All right, thank you. No, that's very good. That's because this is one of those convoluted double negative sentences. Because
Oh,
it starts out with no person.
who shall not and who shall not. It's a triple negative. Holy
Oh,
cow.
That's no person is allowed to be a representative who is not 25 years old, who's not 7 years a citizen, and who is not an inhabitant of the state.
What do you mean not an inhabitant of the state? He has to be an inhabitant of the state in which he lives.
That's me.
Running.
Yeah, right. He has to be an inhabitant of the state in which he's chosen from. Yes.
They always just ignore that because it makes no sense the way it's written.
Boy, my college
No,
English professor wouldn't like that at all.
No, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Robert. What were you saying?
My college English professor would not like this at all.
Yes. Well, yes, that's correct. It's not. It's
17.
hang on. Wait a minute. Oh, okay. No, it's just that it's a double negative. That's all. It's just that it's a double negative. All right, Marty?
Okay. I mean, I just accept it.
Well, yeah, it's no person shall
Yeah.
who is not, you know?
Right.
Yeah. Okay. All right, here's the big one, and we're going to do this one. We're going to do this one bit by quick bit, or bit by short bit, because Look at the length of this paragraph.
Yep.
All right. So Howard, you're up first. And
Okay,
and
tell
I,
me when to stop.
and I want you to read to that point right there.
You can't see it.
Oh, you're doing a screen. Oh, that's geez. Oh, all right.
Yeah,
Representatives.
because I want to talk from that point.
Okay, all right, all right. Your show. I abide. Representatives and direct taxes shall be apportioned among the several states, which may be included within this union, according to their respective numbers, comma.
Good. Now, this actually is a really important compromise that they made because it in the under the Articles of Confederation, each state got one vote. It was one. It was by state, and there were some who wanted to say, well, we'd like to be represented in the Congress state by state. The smaller states said, we'd like to be represented in the Congress by state, but we'd like to have direct taxes be done by population, by their quote respective numbers. If you do it by the respective numbers, that means that the larger states would pay more taxes, but would have less representation because they would have equal representation to the state. The state, and the larger states wanted it the other way around. They wanted to have representation by their respective numbers, but they wanted to have direct taxes by just everybody pays the same amount. There were a number of things that were floated on doing it by the value of land property throughout it and throughout the state, that's how much they would be taxed. There were a number of ideas that were floated. But what they finally settled on is we're going to have representation and direct taxes be linked together, and they'll both be by population, which is what this was. Now, off on the side, first I want to make sure that it's understood what that compromise was about.
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Because it says that the direct taxes shall be apportioned among the several states.
Yes.
So the states are the ones that are getting direct taxes from their citizens.
No. Yes.
Of the state.
Yes.
And the federal government gets paid by the state.
Yes.
Depending on the number of citizens, correct?
That's correct.
Thank you. Which is no longer, is it still that way? Because it's not that way anymore.
Yeah. If Congress said, we want to raise a whole bunch of money based on the population or whatever, they would say, okay, California, you owe us for 50 million people, and Arizona, you owe us for 20, and Oregon, you owe us for less, and and Wyoming gets away with practically nothing.
Okay, thank you.
If they were going to do a direct tax, that's what they would do.
Thank you.
Now, Howard did talk, or no, it was Joel was talking about that Alexander Hamilton didn't think that they'd stand for that, and I don't know. I defer to him on that.
Oh, okay. Now this is Howard. We have direct income tax of each citizen. So that is now a direct tax.
That's what the difference is. Because in 1913, well, actually it was before that, if you had property and you had money that came from that property, Gene may know this, may be able to correct me on this, but if you had money that came from that property, then you were taxed. They had an income tax at that time, and they taxed they taxed that money that you got from the property, which was then argued that means that that's a tax on the property. So the Supreme Court in 1895 said, that's right, an income tax is a direct tax. And so, so you can't do an income tax. So that was in 1895. Then in 1913, the 16th Amendment, if you look at the 16th Amendment, it doesn't give the Congress the power to do anything. It doesn't, all it does is define what is meant by, not by income, but it defines that you can have a tax on income without respect to this particular point here. In other words, basically, it took an income tax out of being a direct tax. It says an income tax is not a direct tax. We are defining it as an indirect tax. That's all that the 16th Amendment does. Is it defines an income tax as an indirect tax.
Hi, vey.
Any thoughts that we want to have on that before we continue?
Well, I don't know. A Jeep Cherokee is as not so much as a direct tax as, say, sequoia trees. I mean, it's just redefining the words, which is ever how they go about undermining and usurping the Constitution. They change the meaning of the words. Sorry for the emotion.
Yeah, that's what they did. Yeah, that's what they did. That's what the 16th Amendment does, is it just redefines an income tax as an indirect tax.
Jesus Christ.
Well,
I have bitter resentment. Every year I have to pay those
all right. All right.
people
Well,
my money.
Let me just put out a thought, which is that the resentment over taxes is not so much that you're paying them, it's what they're doing with them.
Correct.
Ooh.
Because if they were doing stuff that you thought was good, you wouldn't care about paying it.
I don't know. I need all the money I can get.
Yeah,
I know what's best for me, not the damn government. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So now we're going to get into how we define respective numbers. Gene, are we ready to move on?
Yeah.
All right. So we're just going to do this part here, that part right there. So this is, now we're going to, this is a definition of how do we determine what the respective numbers are.
Okay. Which shall be determined by adding to the whole number of free persons, including those bound to service for a term of years, and excluding Indians, not taxed, 3/5 of all.
That's all. So we just do that part. So we're going to take the number of free persons. They're going to, and that includes those that are indentured servants, which will one day be freed. But we're not going to include the Indians who are not taxed. The reason for that was because they had a lot of aliens, Indians, coming in and out of the territory of the United States quite often to trade deer hides, and which is where we get the term buck for money.
Wow. That's so cool. Thank you. Wow. Did not know that.
Okay. They were trading deer hides for iron axes and muskets and stuff, and they were and they would come in and they would trade and then they would go back out. So we're not going to include them in our census, but we are going to include number of free persons and anybody that is indentured for a term of years. And then we are also going to add to that, we can just finish this up now, finish to the end of the sentence. You got that right there, Gene?
Oh, continue.
Yeah.
3/5 of all other persons.
Good. This is the notorious 3/5 clause. And all right, so we're not talking about free people. We're not talking about indentured servants. We're not talking about Indians. Who the hell are we talking about?
Slaves.
It's just the slaves. That's all it is. Now, the southern states wanted the slaves to be counted as a whole person, as an entire person. And the reason they wanted them to do that was because it would increase their representation and they would have more sway in Congress. The northern states said, but wait a minute, this guy really doesn't have, he can't vote, he can't he can't own property, he can't give testimony in a court of law. He's not really a person. He really shouldn't be counted. So the abolitionists wanted to not count them because they wanted to reduce the slave power, what they called the slave power. The southern states, the slave power, wanted to count them as whole people so that it would increase their power in the Congress. So they finally decided on this 3/5 thing. Now, when people come along and they say, see, you didn't think that black people were really a whole person, you only counted them as 3/5. They just have it completely backwards. It was the southern states who were slaveholding wanted them to count full, but those who were abolitionists and wanted to reduce the power of the slave states wanted them not counted at all. So that's the real meaning of the 3/5 clause. I've said what I wanted to say. Anybody, any comments?
Yeah, I've got a question.
Yes, sir.
It says up in the first paragraph,
Yes.
House of Representatives shall be composed of members, okay. And by the people of the several states, the electors in each state shall have the qualifications requisite for the electors of the most numerous branch of the state legislature. So
Right.
maybe I've got myself confused, but okay, so Virginia would not have allowed the slaves to vote
Right.
for their own assembly or House of Burgess or whatever it is in the state of Virginia, Commonwealth of Virginia.
Right.
So why would then they needed the 3/5 clause, because the only people that would be counted would be the ones that could vote. The slaves couldn't vote.
No.
So, or am I mixing something up here?
Yep. Yes, it is their respective numbers. For instance, you count children, don't you?
It doesn't have anything to do with voting, right? That's
Doesn't
the
have
point.
anything to do with voting. That's exactly
Okay.
right. That's exactly right, Robert. It has nothing to do with voting.
Okay,
It's just enumeration of
It's
population.
just an enumeration. Exactly right.
makes sense.
Makes
Thank
sense? Good. All right. Okay, we're good with that so far?
Yep.
All right, the next part, I think we're back up to Joel again. We'll just do that part right there.
All right. The actual enumeration shall be made within 3 years after the first meeting of the Congress of the United States and within every subsequent term of 10 years.
Good. So that means 1787, they're looking at, if it gets ratified and all that, maybe 1788, we have our first Congress. So by 1791, we're going to have the first counting. We're going to have an actual first counting because you got to go and set things up and all that kind of stuff. So, and then after that, we're going to do it every 10 years. And it's going to be done in a manner as the Congress, shall by law direct. So that's what they do, and that's why we have a Congress now. Basically, that's what the census is, and it's done in the way that Congress says we should do the census.
Where does it say that it has to be done the way Congress says?
Right here. What's marked right there? In such manner as they shall by law direct.
Oh, they being Congress?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, yep, I got it.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
all right. Marty, let's do. Let's do that part right there.
Okay, the number of representatives shall not exceed one for every 30,000, but each state shall have at least one representative.
Right. Now, this is the one where I wish I had a whiteboard because this is that means that you will not have, for instance, if you had only 30,000 people, you're not going to have two representatives for that. You're only going to have one representative. But this does not mean that you're going to have, see, that's the floor of the number of people that one representative can represent, which is 30,000 people. If you have more than 30,000 people, you can still have one representative do it. So if you had 40,000 people, you could still have one representative. If you had 50,000 people, you could still have one representative. But when you got up to, but when you got down to, let's say you had a state that had 100,000 people in it. Then that means that state, well, if you take 30,000, you could have, if you had 100,000 people, you could have 3 representatives, but you can't have 4.
Yes.
Okay. But you could have 2, or you could have only 1, because the number of representatives shall not exceed 1 for every 30,000. So if you could have 1 representative representing 100,000 people, but you can't have more than 1 representative representing. You cannot have a representative representing less than 100,000 people, less than 30,000 people. Does that make the distinction here is that there is no ceiling on the number of people that a representative can represent, but there is a floor.
Yes.
Okay.
Is that floor still in place today, John? Because there's a lot more people in this country than there were then.
Yes, that floor is still in place.
Really?
There is, yes, because that floor is 1 for every 30,000, and each representative today represents something like 700,000.
Right.
There's never been a ceiling put on that?
No,
Because there's no representation when you're representing 700,000 people.
that's exactly right. That's exactly right, and that's my position. I believe that it would be real good if we did have a ceiling on that.
Yep.
And if when we get to the end of this whole thing, the last meeting that I do with any group is I say, so let's kick around what we think might be good amendments. And that's always an amendment that I propose, is that there be a ceiling on that you have to have, like you have to have, say, 1 representative could not represent more than 100,000 people.
How many representatives do you think we'd have if we did that?
Well, you'd have about
We have a lot.
A whole lot more than we have now.
Yeah, right. You'd have about 10 times. In fact, actually, I think that if it's 700,000, I think that probably 70,000 is a good tack, which means we'd have 10 times as many representatives, which means that we'd have to buy a whole bunch more desks.
We use Zoom.
And they wouldn't get anything done. Nothing. Zilch. Nothing. Right.
Well, the idea would be create some kind of an organization chart where you've got levels of representation that go up level wise.
I think we need a benevolent dictator.
What you would have,
I promise to be benevolent.
Thanks, Howard.
Sorry.
No, that's fine. From time to time, this group gets away from me. I don't mind. What you would have is you would have chaos, just the way I like Congress.
Yep, you would.
Well,
and what it does mean also is that, see, in my county, the the county commissioner race is for the whole county. The county has about 80,000 people in it. The maximum amount of money that has ever been raised for any race in the county is $25,000. That means that a representative would have would only need, say, $25,000 to win his campaign, which would mean that he would not be beholden to the Congress congressional leadership. He would not be beholden to lobbyists, because he doesn't have to raise $1 million every year. He only has to raise $25,000 and to get elected. So if you want to get money out of politics, that certainly is a way to do it. And because he's only representing 70,000 people. I mean, here when I walk down the street of the county seat, I see the commissioner walking along, one of the commissioners, and I said, "Hey, Simon, haven't seen you for a while. How you been? Blah blah blah." You know, it's like everybody in the county knows him, went to high school with him, or their mother went to high school with him. You know, it's like we know these people. So I think it would be a great boon. But at any rate, so I'll get off my soapbox on that.
But that 25,000 is for a county supervisor, or that's a
Well, it's basically kind of supervisor. It's countywide. It's just
okay.
just countywide, and it would be the size of of what I think would be a proper district, which is a maximum of, say, 100,000 people. If there were a ceiling on it, I'd put maybe at 80,000 or 100,000 on it. You'd have to raise $30,000, $40,000. That's it. Some lobbyist comes along and says, "I have $100,000 for you." You go, "I don't care." No, I just, I have to go home and face these people because they knew who I am. They know who I am, and I went to high school. A lot of them, you know. So,
Well, I just did the math, and there's 330 million U.S. citizens,
Yep.
and at 100,000 divided into that, that would be representatives in Congress, 3,300.
okay.
You want to have
Yeah.
3,300 congressmen?
Yeah,
I would like somebody to represent me.
yeah. I'd like somebody to represent me too.
Are we claiming that we live in an unrepresentative?
Well, look at it. When
Government?
the British were representing the colonies, how many representatives did the colonists have?
In
0.
England, in the
right?
Parliament, English
Yeah.
Parliament?
Yeah, they really had no representatives. You know,
Do
they had
Didn't they not have one each, maybe? North Carolina, one rep. Massachusetts, one. I don't know. So it's all speculation for me.
Okay. Hang on.
I didn't mean to shut you down, Marty.
Nope.
Sorry.
Oh no, that's fine.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I had a little chat that just happened there. I'm sorry. Catch me up to where we were. What were you saying?
Talking about the number of representatives would be 300. How many did you say?
Well, there's
300?
Yeah,
330,000.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
about
about
300.
100,000.
Yeah. I'm actually thinking it would be about 10 times what we have right now, which is 435. So I think it would be about 4,000. I think about 4,000 is about right.
3,000 or 4,000, it doesn't make that much difference. It's too many.
No, it's not enough because we're not represented.
They don't do anything now with 400 of them. So how are they going to do anything with 3,000 or 4,000?
The only value that it gives, Robert, I'm sorry, the only value that I see in it is that I know who that representative is, and that representative will represent me. He will not need a bunch of lobbying money to do stuff to advance his own career. His career depends upon us, not upon who he knows back in Washington. That's the only value I see to it. But I get your point. Robert. I'm not disputing that.
I would probably debate that, but not now.
Okay, all right, fair enough. Fair enough. All right, so can we move on now?
Sure.
All right. And I think actually that it is Robert's thing to do, and we'll just go ahead and do this right here.
Okay, and until such enumeration shall be made, the state of New Hampshire shall be called to choose 3 Massachusetts, 8 Rhode Island, and Providence Plantation 1, Connecticut 5, New York 6, New Jersey 4, Pennsylvania 8, Delaware 1, Maryland 6, Virginia 10, North Carolina 5, South Carolina 5, and Georgia 3. Pennsylvania wins.
Yes, Pennsylvania does win, doesn't it? My goodness.
Yep.
Well, no, Virginia has 10 somehow. I don't know how that happened.
Yeah,
That's right.
Virginia has 10.
3/5 of a
Where's-
person adds up.
Where's New York in there? Where's New York in there?
New York
New
6.
York-
New York 6, okay. Yeah, okay. So that because they didn't, I mean, this is just the transition, you know,
Oh, the census.
every
First census.
document, when you do something like that, you have to have the transition until you get everything in place. And this is the transition.
Yeah, I assume that they did it somewhat based on the populations of each of those areas.
Oh, yes.
They were guesstimating.
Yeah, they were estimating populations, exactly right. The next one, I think, Kevin, I think we're down to you for this one here.
By the way, when they did the first census, the population was a little bit shy of 1 million people.
Okay,
Really? When was that
Yes.
done, the first one?
1790,
Okay.
3 years after the ratification, or well, in 1788, they had enough states to ratify that they could set up the FedGov.
right.
Thank you.
All right, Kevin?
When vacancies happen in the representation from any state, the executive authority thereof shall issue writs of election to fill such vacancies.
Good. So the governor says, hey, we're missing a representative. We have to have an election to get a new representative. Now, Kevin, let me ask you, you had asked me a question in the chat. And you were asking me, you wanted to review an explanation that I had given. So let's just do it again, because I don't know which one you're talking about.
Well, okay. I mean, I want to say, that's okay, because I didn't want to derail the conversation, but it was, I can't scroll up on your, I don't have my book with me, and I can't scroll up. It was towards the very beginning.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it might be better if we just addressed it.
Okay, fair enough.
It was really good. It was one of those things that if I had recorded, I would review a couple of times and, kind of study out, because it was really good. The explanation was good.
Okay, good. And Howard just asked me what's the number of my congressional district. I'm in Oregon 2.
Good. Excellent.
All righty. And let's see, I think we're back up to, well, I'll just read this one. The House of Representatives shall choose their speaker and other officers and shall have the sole power of impeachment. These are the only ones who can impeach another officer of the federal government. They are the only ones that can impeach a judge or anyone in the executive branch that they want to get rid of. And that is the end. That is the end of Article 2. And I think that we've come to the end of our time. Everybody,
Cool.
how'd we do?
Good.
Yep.
All right. So, cool. I am recording all of these. One of these days I will get busy and put them up on our YouTube video, YouTube channel. But I have to find the time and do it and all that kind of stuff.
Open Howard's envelope. You got some money in there.
Oh, well, okay. That's good. That's good. Oh, and Kevin wants to buy another book. Kevin, Kevin, you don't like using Amazon, is that right?
No, I prefer to support small businesses.
Yeah, I understand. I
I
understand.
don't do the Amazon Walmart thing. That's just me.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, we don't see each other, so I can't hand you a copy of the book. But
I know, and you live in the county and I live in the city, so we don't run into each other much.
you live in Grants Pass now?
Yep.
Oh, okay. All right. I have to arrange a time and to make a secret rendezvous and all that kind of stuff. All right. All right. We good, guys?
Yep.
All right. Any last comments, thoughts? Gene?
No.
Okay. Are you waving me off because you really have something to say, but you're just going to be polite? Yes, you are. Okay. Okay. All right. Well, when we get to income taxes again, we'll probably take that up in a little more depth. Okay.
What are we going to do next week?
We're going to do Article 1, Section 3.
Okay.
Did Article 1, Section 2. Now, that's right. This was the last meeting for June.
Uh-huh.
I have to set up for meetings for July. And I was talking to you last week about, maybe I'll do it on a Wednesday, maybe I'll do it on a Thursday, blah, 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 blah. I don't know. How is Sunday at 4 o'clock working out for everybody?
Works for me.
Okay, good.
Howard is going to have to
Oh, that's right.
sometime go back to work, and I won't be able to attend Sunday at 4 o'clock. I'm still enjoying my unemployment compensation.
You're welcome.
I appreciate the contribution, Marty. But
Okay, no, all right, I got that.
Do you know when you're going back?
it could be any time I choose, really, frankly. But in other words, I have a union job, and my seniority number would fit, and I would be on the lineup. Do you see? I would bump out a higher number, and I would work in their place.
Oh, okay.
So
All right, well, I'll tell you what. Let's do Sunday at 4 for the month of July.
okay,
Okay.
All right.
And then Howard, just let us know when you go back to work, and we can always change it when you do go back to work, right? Right, John?
I arrange. I do a month at a time, so it would be like the end of July.
okay. I'm okay with that. I think. Well, yeah. Let's just do it. And
Well, you know
I-
what?
I took.
You know what? If it comes and everybody agrees, then if it's in the middle of the month and we say, okay, let's do it on Thursdays at 6 or something, then we can always just.
Yeah, we can change it when you go back to work. That's not hard.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, I appreciate that very much. I actually didn't go back to work. It was one of the big factors as I wanted to attend this meeting, you all.
Okay. Well,
This is cool stuff.
Yeah,
well, good.
absolutely.
I'm glad you like it. All right, I'm going to schedule meetings for the month of July through for Sunday. When it comes to be a time when we decide we're not going to do that anymore, then we won't do that anymore, and we'll do it on some other time. We'll agree to a time, and that's good. All right, everybody good?
Yes, sir.
All right.
Thank you.
Next meeting, July 5th, Sunday.
Happy 4th of July. Happy 2nd of July.
Happy 2nd, happy 4th.
Happy 2nd. I'm with you on that.
Good flag.
There's a flag. Good job.
Flag. All right, thank you, guys.
Thank you,
Talk to you all
everyone.
later.
So long.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay, bye-bye.